Letter 186 by Charles Lamb. Dated by H.C.R. Feb. 7, 1810. Dr. R., my brother whom you have met at my rooms, a plump good-looking man of 47, has written a book about humanity, which I transmit to you herewith. Wilson the publisher has put it in his head that you can get it reviewed for him. I dare say it is not in the scope of your review, but if you could put it in any likely train, he would rejoice. For alas, our boasted humanity partakes of vanity. As it is, he teases me to death with choosing to suppose that I could get it into all the reviews at a moment's notice. I, who have been set up as a mark for them to throw at, and would willingly consign them all to hell flames and Magira's snaky locks. But here's the book, and don't show it Mrs. Collier, for I remember she makes excellent eel soup, and the leading points of the book are directed against that very process. Yours truly, C. Lamb. At home tonight, Wednesday, February 7. Addressed to Henry Robinson, Esquire, 56 Hatton Garden, with a treatise on cruelty to animals. Lamb's brother, John Lamb, who was born in 1763, was now accountant of the Southsea House. His character is described by Lamb in the Elia essay, My Relations, where he figures as James Elia. Robinson's diary later frequently expresses Robinson's dislike of his dogmatic ways. The pamphlet has been identified by Mr. L.S. Livingston as a letter to the Right Hon. William Wyndham, on his opposition to Lord Erskine's bill for the prevention of cruelty to animals. It was published by Maxwell and Wilson at 17 Skinner Street in 1810. No author's name is given. One copy only is known, and that is in America, and the owner declines to permit it to be reprinted. The particular passage referring to eel pie runs thus. If an eel had the wisdom of Solomon, he could not help himself in the ill usage that befalls him. But if he had, and were told, that it was necessary for our subsistence that he should be eaten, that he must be skinned first, and then broiled. If ignorant of man's usual practice, he would conclude that the cook would so far use her reason as to cut off his head first, which is not fit for food, as then he might be skinned and broiled without harm. For however the other parts of his body might be convulsed during the culinary operations, there could be no feeling of consciousness therein, the communication with the brain being cut off. But if the woman were immediately to stick a fork into his eye, skin him alive, coil him up in a skewer, head and all, so that in the extremest agony he could not move, and forthwith broil him to death, then were the same almighty power that formed man from the dust, and breathed into his nostrils the breath of life, to call the eel into a new existence, with a knowledge of the treatment he had undergone, and he found that the instinctive disposition which man has in common with other carnivorous animals, which inclines him to cruelty, was not the sole cause of his torments, but that men did not attend to consider whether the sufferings of such insignificant creatures could be lessened, that eels were not the only sufferers, that lobsters and other shellfish were put into cold water and boiled to death by slow degrees in many parts of the sea-coast, that these, and many other such wanton atrocities, were the consequence of carelessness occasioned by the pride of mankind despising their low estate, and of the general opinion that there is no punishable sin in the ill treatment of animals designed for our use, that therefore the woman did not bestow so much thought on him as to cut his head off first, and that she would have laughed at any considerate person who should have desired such a thing. With what fearful indignation might he inveigh against the unfeeling metaphysician that, like a cruel spirit, alarmed at the appearance of a dawning of mercy upon animals, could not rest satisfied with opposing the cruelty prevention bill by the plea of possible inconvenience to mankind, highly magnified and emblazoned, but had set forth to the vulgar and unthinking of all ranks, in the jargon of proud learning, that man's obligations of morality towards the creatures subjected to his use are imperfect obligations. Robinson's review was, I imagine, the London Review, founded by Richard Cumberland in February, 1809, which however no longer existed, having run its brief course by November, 1809. Megra's snaky locks, from Paradise Lost, X. 559. And up the trees climbing, sat thicker than the snaky locks that curled Megra. Here should come another letter from Lamb to Charles Lloyd, Sr., dated March 10, 1810. It refers to Mr. Lloyd's translation of the first 7 books of the Odyssey and is accompanied by a number of criticisms. Lamb advises Mr. Lloyd to complete the Odyssey, adding that he would prize it for its Homeric plainness and truths above the Confederate jumble of Pope, Broom, and Fenton, which goes under Pope's name, and is far inferior to his Iliad. Among the criticisms is one on Mr. Lloyd's use of the word patriotic, in which Lamb says that it strikes his ears as being too modern, adding that in English few words of more than 3 syllables chime well into a verse. The word sentiment calls from him the remark that he would root it out of a translation of Homer. It came in with Sterne, and was a child he had by affectation.